Hi, and welcome to the I Teed Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 108. What can your diet teach us about misconfigurations? So, diets, nutrients, calories, the whole fucking thing can be extremely confusing. The USDA, the United States Dietary Association, or Dietary Administration, whatever, U.S. Department of Agriculture. Holy shit, I got that wrong. Way wrong. U.S. Department of Agriculture is the responsible party for identifying the dietary needs of Americans and communicating them in ways that can be easily understood. Back when I was first growing up, it was the 4 food groups. Then it became the food pyramid. And now they have a lot of different guides, and none of them are really as good. There's still the 4 food groups. They say the 5 food groups, but anyway, it's all in an effort to try to communicate what can seem like a very complicated idea, in that you have to eat stuff in the right balance to make sure that you're healthy. And this is true. Overall, I'm not going to claim I am an expert on dietary needs and requirements and all of that, but this isn't a health podcast for that fucking reason. But anyway, the whole point that I want to make with dietary needs is that there are a lot of things that you can do to make sure that you're healthy, that you're eating healthy, and that the food that you're intaking is beneficial. And honestly, for the vast majority of Americans, it is very easy for us to do because there's so much food in this country. A lot of it goes to waste, and we won't talk about all of that. Food scarcity is not really prevalent in the United States. And so getting the necessary nutrients is not necessarily very difficult. However, your diet can definitely have an impact on your health. And when we talk about dietary needs and your health, primarily for Americans and most Western countries, the biggest concern isn't getting the right nutrients in the right balance. It's actually overconsumption. And that is the primary health concern, at least in the United States, considering that we're now about 66% of all Americans are either overweight or obese. The largest illness that kills Americans is still heart disease. Cancer is prevalent and widespread among Americans. Americans have a lower life expectancy than other countries. There's a lot of other problems. We have a higher rate of diabetes than most other countries. And this is generally because of our diet. And not to say that diet fixes everything, and there aren't notable genetic issues or other contributors to problems that we face in our health, ultra processed foods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But generally, the vast majority of health issues that result from dietary overconsumption is exactly that. It is that we eat too much and we need to control how much we eat. And it's very simple. Like, the rules surrounding your food and how much you eat and weight loss is calories in, calories out. If you want to lose weight, eat fewer calories than what you use. If you want to gain weight, eat more calories than what you use. It's pretty fucking simple. Your body processes food into energy, and if you have too much energy, your body stores it in fat because that's what it does. So, what does this all have to do with technology and, the original conversation, the original subject, misconfigurations and whatnot? Well, so let's say you're consistently you're overeating, and you are consistently eating, just absolute shit. Let's say you have what is I would say the average American diet as seen by Europeans, and you're eating nothing but candy and McDonald's each and every day. Well, those are calorie dense foods, and those have a very specific flaw in them, is that they don't fill you for very long, and that you feel hungry after you eat or very soon after you eat. And so you always feel like you have to eat more. And so, if you're going by the whims of your body and you just eat and eat and eat, you will steadily gain weight. Generally, I would say about the vast majority of people probably only burn 2,000 calories on a day, some less, some more, but on average, it's probably about 2,000 calories a day. And so if you look at the calorie content of any fast food meal or any candy bar, it doesn't take much to get to the point where you are overeating what you have spent in calories. And one of the things that people don't consider is the amount of calories that are in alcohol, because there's a shit ton of calories in alcohol. I mean, for fuck's sake, rum is just sugar. That's all it fucking is sugar, processed sugar. But yeah, it's sugar. Fuck. It's got a lot of calories in it. So anyway, moving on. Misconfigurations are a source of the vast majority of non-social engineered, non-phishing attack and breaches. And what I mean by misconfiguration is that you have something exposed on the internet that you either didn't intend, didn't mean, or that is easily identified as an attack vector. So for a good example of this, let's look at SSH. SSH, Secure Socket Host, is a control mechanism where you can remote into a device and manage it with that via command line tools, or if you happen to have some sort of translation for SSH into a GUI, you can manage it by GUI. But SSH really is just that secure socket host allows you to connect remotely to a device to manage it. That's its intent, at least. So the vast majority of devices that accept SSH require you to log in to do it. And SSH is hosted over port 2022, if you were curious. At least, yeah. And then the way that SSH is really installed on most systems, you can authenticate just directly. You basically connect and then authenticate directly into it. It's not like text-based. There is some encryption there. It's not, there's no plain text pattern being passed over the internet. So man in the middle attack's not really something we see. But primarily, the way that this is attacked is through exploitation and identification of it, and really just having it exposed allows somebody to brute force into it. And so this is not really a port you want to have exposed to the internet. You don't really want it ever exposed to the internet. But for a vast number of reasons, manufacturers, vendors, software developers, whatnot, tend to leave this open on all ports by default, which is a bad idea, because again, you don't want this exposed to the internet, because it allows somebody to access and manage your device if they can log in using their username and password. And if you don't have any defense on that port, somebody can just bang away at it to try to brute force their way into your device until they get in. And this is the thing that happens. Like, a large number of organizations become compromised through open SSH ports, whether or not it's the fact that they've left it open inadvertently, or they on purpose leave it open so that they can manage it outside, so their IT people can do that. There's a large number of organizations that get compromised by this. I can't tell you exactly which ones, because the vast majority of people who get hacked by this call it a novel attack, and they obfuscate what the fuck they did wrong because they don't want to be embarrassed. But yeah, it's a really basic thing to fix. And then there's a lot of different methodologies to avoid this kind of attack, aside from simply just allowing or denying straight up SSH out on the internet. You can use things like port knocking, you can do multi-factor authentication. There's a tons of different things. There's tons of different things that you can do to secure SSH in a way that you can still have it expose the internet, but not just out there for anybody to continually bang away at. But if you accidentally leave it open, or it was left open and you weren't aware about it, you weren't aware of it because the manufacturer decided to leave it open or whatever, that's a problem. And that's a method that you can get hacked. Just like if you continually overeat with your diet, you will become fat. And that can be a concern for your health later on down the road. Another concept with this is if you don't ever eat any vegetables, you're missing out on a lot of B vitamins, a lot of nutrients that are responsible for keeping you alive and healthy. If you don't eat vegetables in a proper balance with other food types, you will lose out on these nutrients, and you'll have less of that. And so, you'll have to continually, that will cause continual health issues as well. Scurvy is a problem. If you don't eat enough citric acid, you get scurvy. And then you have a whole host of health issues, just like with, if you decide to leave an FTP server open to the internet and don't secure it in any way. Just a straight up FTP, which is text-based or, plain text. It's all plain text on that. So those are issues that you have to consider when deploying solutions. Is what do I need to do to make this secure? And misconfigurations are a thing that can happen without intent. They can happen without any sort of active malice or active knowledge of you. Again, if a manufacturer decides to leave a port open, that's going to happen. We'll use HP printers as an example. HP printers are the devil. I'll start off with that just because they're printers, and moreover, they're made by HP. But HP printers come pre-installed with their own base operating system that you can utilize to manage the device remotely, specifically if they're network printers. So really anything beyond just a consumer level inkjet, it's probably going to be able to connect to the internet, and you're going to be able to manage it and send and receive information over that methodology. Well, when you deploy an HP printer, guess what? It has literally every fucking service enabled. Telnet, SSH, Bonjour, fucking SMB, it's got FTP, it's got every goddamn service enabled by default. And another fun fact about HP printers is that they have a username and password which is generic. That may have changed recently, but for the longest time, the username and password on an HP printer was literally admin pass. That's it. That's all you had to know in order to get into an HP printer. It was literally every fucking printer. And even now, printers still come with admin pass, more than just HP. There are printers that are bought today that have that same fucking flaw, where the username and password is the bare minimum of a password. So if you are somebody who's just plugging a printer in to get it to fucking work, there is no security for your printer. You have to have an IT person to manage that printer to secure it properly. Anyway, with all of these ports being open on this HP printer, if someone were to get into your network, or that printer become exposed because of universal plug and play, because guess what? That's a fucking thing too. Then an attacker can get in and use that printer to attack everything else on your network. And I think I've covered universal plug and play in the past, so I don't want to go over that. And if I haven't, I am definitely going to fucking cover that, because that shit is annoying as fuck. for anybody who's in cybersecurity, it should be a giant fucking red flag, and everybody should be like, why is this a fucking thing? Anyway, rant over. If you have an if you have an HP printer, likely every service is open and enabled. And you have to go in and disable these services. But if they're exposed to the internet, somebody can use that printer to then attack the rest of your network by installing additional pieces of software onto it. So, for instance, what we have seen in the past is that an attacker gains access to one of these printers. And what they do is they install their own operating system or sideload their own apps onto the operating system that's already installed because, like I've said in the past, it's a Linux based machine. So it's got a Linux operating system. So they know that they can run code on it. And all they have to do is get to that base operating system. And then they've gained access to the rest of the system. So once they do that, then they can run whatever they want from that system. And it just becomes another computer. Even though it's a printer, so its processing power is pretty weak, it can still do things. As long as it's a computer, it can still do things. Remember that, because that's a whole fucking problem. TVs, your printer, your goddamn filter on your filter system on your fucking fridge, your water cooler, your, I don't know, your car, your key fob. They all probably have an operating system on them that can be manipulated to operate maliciously. And so if you misconfigure, or if somebody has misconfigured those items, that equipment to have these insecure or less than secure functions available that you wouldn't normally use, that means that's a venue for attack for somebody to come in and own you. And that's a problem. Just like it's a problem with your diet. You eat too much, you're going to get fat. You don't eat enough. You're going to lose too much weight. If you don't eat the right kinds of food in the right balance, you're going to be unhealthy. And that is a concept that is known, but for whatever reason, we all have a problem with following the rules properly. And so how do we fix this? How do we fix this fucking problem? Well, with food, obviously it's eat healthy. And that can be a challenge. Really, that I understand. That can be a challenge. It's hard because your body tells you, I want food. Your reaction is, let me feed you. And as somebody who has easy access to food, it can make not overeating an extreme challenge, honestly. And so, eating the right kinds of foods, controlling your diet, controlling when you eat, controlling how you eat, controlling what you eat, those are all things that kind of have to happen. And, if you're not interested in counting calories and not interested in making sure you have the right macronutrients in the right balance, it can be something that is not easily done, not part of your life. And that's something that needs to be understood as most people react and work their own diets. But what we can't do is, on the cybersecurity side, do the same fucking thing with printers and computers and systems that are integrated into our networks. Basically, what we have to do as cybersecurity practitioners is, when a new item is purchased, there needs to be a policy for that item. We need to have a policy that states, when an item is purchased, there is a review of that device where all unnecessary services are disabled, all security features are enabled, and default passwords are changed and adjusted before it is installed in the environment. We, as security practitioners, have to do that to make sure that those systems don't become liabilities later on. Now, the vast majority of systems that we install and that we deploy come in at least some form of security first configuration. When you install a Linux machine, it is wide open to the internet, wide open to everything. So you do have to configure like the UFW, uncomplicated firewall, or IP tables, whatever you want to do. You can configure that, but you need to configure it and enable it on your Linux devices, because otherwise it doesn't come like that unless you're using a specific distro that has it enabled. You also need to make sure that your services are scoped appropriately and that your networks are configured appropriately as well. There's a lot of steps to making sure that your security in depth is in place, and that you're not just exposing everything out to everything on your network and the internet at large. So that is a habit that you have to get into, just like you have to have good eating habits in order to maintain health. But maintaining cybersecurity health is what will keep you from getting breached. Now, one other thing that will help you in this is continually having a review, a penetration test, vulnerability scan, port scan against your environment to ensure that you know what's going on. Just like going to the doctor every year to make sure that your body is staying healthy is something that you probably should be doing as an adult. A lot of us don't. And a lot of organizations don't do the vulnerability scan. They don't do the penetration test. They don't do this because they don't think it's important unless they're forced to. And so as organizations, as an environment, as somebody who handles data or has technology at their fingertips and would be harmed by a breach or by a cyber attack, it is important that you actually have these things done, just so that way and you have the information available to you. If you know that you have a port open on your external, you can take steps to secure it. You can take steps to secure that item. You can take steps to remove that piece that's vulnerable to attack, or that is a juicy target for attackers or malicious actors on the internet. And one last thing that I'll cover is, I understand that it can be difficult, specifically as a small business, to want to do these things. Just like it can be difficult as somebody who might not be able to afford healthier food to not buy the cheaper foods that taste good and are calorie dense. It can be difficult to not want to go to it can be difficult to not have, or it can be difficult to do proper security protocol in your environment, because as a small business, somebody who's just barely scraping by with the margins that you're doing, it can be really difficult to justify that cost because it's not helping you earn money. And I understand that can be a difficult prospect to really swallow, because, man, I'm spending a whole bunch of money that I could otherwise be using to improve my business or improve this and improve that. And what I have to say with that is, if you have a small business and you're kind of in that circumstance, definitely look at teaming up with other small businesses to purchase an agreement with an IT provider, whether it be an MSP or a single IT provider. Look at spreading the cost around a partnership of businesses so that your IT operations are not left out in the cold. Because again, it only takes a little bit of not knowing what you're doing to cause a significant problem with your organization for you to get owned. And if you get owned, your business fails. You probably can't survive as a small business, barely scraping by on the margins that you're getting. You probably can't survive what is the average cybersecurity incident cost of $4.5 million. That's a problem. And if you aren't prepared to approach that situation yourself, you need help. And definitely seek the help of somebody who can help you. Seek out an MSP, seek out a partnership with other small businesses to try to get this service enabled for your business. So if you can do that, if you can find a way to secure yourself, you can make sure that you're not going to run into this situation where you have ports or you're self-exposed in a way that you can't see. Look for these things. Understand as a small business owner that this is kind of the cost of doing business, and prepare for it. But we as IT professionals can also help by making sure and providing tools to do this for these users, for these folks who are operating on these tiny margins, to do it themselves, to understand, and to be able to process things better, faster, easier. Because as a small business, they are under attack as much as the big guys. The people using the same weapons to attack Fortune 500 companies are using those weapons to attack small businesses. And there is no difference. They don't care, because $5 is $5. I'm going to go buy me a footlong. Well, that's all I got time for today, guys. I hope you all have a great day.